Venture Brothers is coming back, so today I'm gonna make a life-size replica of H.E.L.P.e.R. to the Venture Compound. I couldn't get the rights to the Venture Compound. To the Jakespeare Compound. I couldn't afford a compound. To whatever I can afford then. Typical. For this build, I used foam floor mats, blue craft foam, contact cement or hot glue, wood screws, chair casters, conduit of various sizes, PVC pipe, PVC cutter, sanding tools, safety gear, scissors, razor pens, and a box cutter. Alright, let's start off with some Venture Blue. And a cone. Scratch the cone. Be sure to cut off the puzzle pieces, just makes it easier. All the straight lines I'm going to cut with a straight edge, which may seem pretty straightforward, but if you use a wooden ruler or a yardstick, you're going to have kindling. I cut one sheet of EVA foam in half of that will be used as the abdomen, and the other I'm cutting into quarters to be used as the head, and what have you. Oh damn, I can do a good Dr. Henry Killinger. This is my magic murder bag, you silly Billy. For once my vocal fry comes in handy. I then heat formed the quarter piece with my heat gun so that it would be easier to wrap into a cylinder. See, I did it once and that just tore my voice. Now I'm gonna have to narrate this like Dr. Henry Killinger. I don't know if anyone can listen to that voice for 2 minutes, let alone 10. Time for some filler dialogue. No, can't do it. So for those of you who aren't familiar, Venture Brothers is a late night Cartoon Network show. Sort of if you divided Archer by Aqua Teen Hunger Force, I think you'd probably get Venture Brothers. Does that math check out? It's an affectionate, albeit irreverent, parody of the action-adventure cartoons of the 1960s. 70s, 80s, they sort of pile on as the seasons progress. But essentially, shows like Johnny Quest, Thunderbirds, G.I. Joe, X-Men, I could just keep naming stuff. The premise being, Johnny Quest, Rusty Venture, is all grown up and horribly traumatized from being dragged all over the world as sidekick on his father's adventures, and is unwittingly making all the same mistakes while raising his own inept kids, Hank and Dean. All while being terrorized by the wannabe supervillain, the Mighty Monarch! Often told through the oddly Kurosawa-esque framing device of henchmen 21 and 24, who both have that quality of expendable and invulnerable that makes for the perfect henchman, and are the sole reason I'm familiar with Gustav Holst. Oh, and H.E.L.P.e.R. is the robot best friend that Rusty's dad built for him, so that he wouldn't have to spend time with him. It's extremely dark humor, but I enjoy that sort of thing. The beveled edge rather than the straight edge is going to give slightly more surface area for the glue to adhere to and prevent the seam from trying to pull itself apart. I stuck it in a tube so that it would hold its shape better. Then realizing that this would result in a head that was way too wide, it kind of has to be exactly the dimensions of the interior of that pipe, and it's clearly not. So I sliced a couple inches off of it. Pretty decent cut. Yeah, it doesn't even need any sanding. I'm going to use the rest of the sheet to make the abdomen. I heat formed that as well. Then I sanded the puzzle remnants off of the edge. Then I cemented those pieces together in a very poorly lit garage, Jake. I know he can't hear me. The foam sometimes tries to pull itself apart before it sets, so it's helpful to store it in a tube of the same diameter for a few hours, such as a damaged TIE fighter. Make sure you can't do this build unless you have a damaged TIE fighter. Just saying. I followed the same procedure for the abdomen. Now I think this is going to be the part that's inside of the pectoral area. Just so that I don't have to sand this part in, because there's a weird logo right here, which I've never seen that on EVA foam before. I heat formed it up again to even out the lumps and add H.E.L.P.e.R.'s trademark backswept head. Okay, so it is so subtle. Can you see that? But it is there, and honestly, that's enough to convey what I'm looking for. I cut off more puzzle pieces so that I could use the strip for the various concentric ring details. You know, I'm actually going to leave some of these on here so that it just has more purchase, is that the right word? Surface area to hold on to on the inside. So for the light on top, I want to use this old bike light, but I opened it up and the batteries were dying. Yeah, it only works if you're pressing the button. And all my spares are corroded. So, thanks, ravages of time. So instead, I installed an LED light and then made the mouth out of a heat-formed strip of foam. Not the same strip of foam that I cut off of there, because to look right, it has to be significantly wider. The pattern was kind of visible, you know, when he talks. So I sanded that off on the belt sander. I also made this piece for the bottom of the jaw. I'm going to use super glue, I guess for the time convenience. I had to trim it down a bit because it was contacting the edge. It might still, I should probably trim that down even more. I love it. For the eyes, I'm going to use these rivets just for the little stalk part. They are technically a recast, but I don't think anybody has a patent on rivets. Oh no, it's the White Star Line. How are they still in business? We make submarines now. That makes sense. Although I am going to have to trim off the flash with my side cutters. And maybe sand it a bit. I don't know, I'm having a real internal battle as to whether the cylindrical part should be the eye or the dome should be the eye. Because the cylindrical part is more accurate, but I like the way the dome looks. I don't think I'm actually going to glue them in, just so that I can swap them around, maybe put some lights in there. See, H.E.L.P.e.R doesn't actually have glowing eyes. In fact, they're buttons, and that's how you do a hard reboot. But light adds so much. I don't know. Okay, now I'm gonna have to drill eye holes. I carved eye holes using a metal pen casing and then inserted the eyes. They're not glued in, it's just a tension fit because upon my 9 millionth viewing of Venture Brothers, I noticed that H.E.L.P.e.R's eye color changes from episode to episode. Sometimes they're yellow, sometimes orange, sometimes green. Once they were white. There's one episode where he has like eyelids, so it's anime. I don't know. And in some episodes, he's a walking eye. What's he do? I don't know. Walking eye stuff? I just don't know. To puppeteer the mouth, I'm using fishing line with a key ring attached to one end. Using an eye bolt, I attached the line to the jaw. I used more foam circle cutouts to make the jaw bolts. I used a wooden barbecue skewer to make the jaw's hinge pin. I love the expression. I love the faces. So the jaw isn't moving up and down as smoothly as I would have liked because there's too much friction between the foam and the hinge pin. So to eliminate that, I'm going to remove the hinge pin and chop up a pen body and tunnel it into the foam, which will eliminate the friction between the wood and the foam. And his mouth will move much more quickly and comically. The exterior of the head is contacting the interior of the jaw, causing too much friction there as well. So in order to get the mouth to move up and down, I added weight to the front of the jaw so that it would fall back down once slack was introduced back into the fishing line. I did this using washers as a counterweight. Then I made the base of the abdomen. So while contact cement takes 12 minutes to become tacky, 3 minutes of working time, and then 30 hours to totally air out, hot glue only has, 5 or 10 minute working time to solidify. And I mean that specifically for EVA foam. If you use it on metal, the metal just instantly soaks up all the heat, solidifies the hot glue. But the foam it's literally an insulator. Then I moved on to the skirt, for which I need to make a cone template out of this broken pencil holder. Ugh. Gotta vacuum more. I accomplished this using foil and duct tape and cardboard. I know that this is ridiculous, and honestly it sort of flies in the face of my whole tape spool that I got up here. But a lot of the materials that I'm working with are donated, and I can't always choose the form that they come in. If you want to help me improve my quality materials and workspace, shop equipment, then you can support me on Patreon. Like these people. Patrons get early ad-free access to the YouTube videos, as well as ensure the continued future of the channel. Because I just assume that the ad revenue could go away at any second. They keep changing their policies. Just totally unreliable. Then I transferred that to EVA foam and cut it out with a razor pen and scissors. So I'm using scissors on the straight edges because it's fine. But if I were to use them on the curved edge, then they could put divots in the part of the foam that I want to keep. Also, they will yield a cut that's not totally clean. It's pretty clean by comparison. Like if you're using a dull blade, it's cleaner than a dull razor pen blade. But still, any exposed seam, I want it to be as clean as possible. I rolled it up so that it would adopt a curved shape and stuck it into a small trash can so that it would retain that shape as it cooled. Oh, will that fit in the solo cup? Probably not. Now I'm gonna have to go and sand it. On the belt sander. I sanded the edges smooth so that I would get good contact when cementing it. Look how much better this shot is now. I gotta time the sanding to happen during the daytime. After it had been cemented, I cut circles for the top and bottom. I'm gonna use a copper pipe to cut holes in these circles for the spine to go through. You can finish it with a knife if it's giving you an issue. I should probably sharpen this. The pipe cutters have to be sharpened as well, which I just do that on the belt sander. It's very important to do this before you glue them into the skirt, lampshade, whatever. Because you can see I'm putting a lot of pressure on this, and yeah, you could break it because there's no reinforcement. And why? I mean, you could add reinforcement, but why would you? The glue gun's heating up. I think that's actually overkill. I'm just gonna use super glue. Now, for the bottom cylinder, if the hole is at all misaligned, then once the spine gets inserted, it could sit at an angle and not look right. So, to prevent that, I'm gonna cut the hole with a pipe that has a slightly wider diameter than the pipe that I'm eventually gonna use. Although it does help to try and get it centered. This is part of a broken tripod, by the way. Support me on Patreon so that I can replace my tripods. Did you see this? I glued my knife to my workbench. Then I glued them in place. Yeah, and that, like, it's smooshing out is part of what I was trying to avoid with using super glue on the top one. Although, on the base here, it's not that big a deal because I can just get rid of it. Okay. For the final main body segment, I made a vest from my generic vest template, and then heavily modified it to make it more rounded. I'm reinforcing the interior of those seams with scrap foam for added support. Then I made H.E.L.P.e.R's name tag. Trust me, it's supposed to look like that. I'll explain later. The hole was too big and roughly cut, so I covered it with a piece of blue craft foam with a slot cut out of it for the neck. Alright, so that's on there, using copious amounts of super glue. Not totally accurate, but 1,000 times better than just, you know, an open jagged hole. Now the shoulders aren't coming to perfect circles, so I'm going to cut up an oatmeal container, maybe 2, just for this bit right here that I'm going to use to get it to hold its shape, so it's circular instead of teardrop. Okay, we get it. I cut holes for the arms and then did a quick test fitting of the abdomen. Looking good. Looking good. My man. Slow down. Now for the arms. I'm going to use blue PVC pipe for the arms. I think I can get all 4 segments out of this one piece, and I'm going to cut that with the PVC cutter. To connect the arms, I'm going to use an EVA foam cylinder. Dowel? Yeah, I guess it's more of a dowel. I mean, it's the same. And that's set up fast. See, like 3 seconds to 3 minutes. I have no idea. Let's do that. Oh, you know what? Do we have the conduit? This is a little thin, and it looks in some of the animation like it scrunches a bit. So to simulate that, I'm going to use conduit from DRD eye stalks. I cut those into elbow segments and slid them on. No need to glue them. They'll be held in place by the PVC. So on closer inspection of the source material, what am I talking about? I was watching cartoons. I noticed that the front limb is actually half the length of the back limb, to say nothing of the amount that's going to be hidden within the shoulder. So I'll chop a little more than half. I made a claw hand and then traced the individual pieces onto foam in order to get the hand for the other arm. I cut up a cardboard cereal box to make the hinge for the interior, similar to the way that I made the chopper claws all those years ago. I sandwiched it between other pieces and glued them all together. Then I used a skewer for the hinge pin and then kept it from sliding out by covering it with foam circle offcuts. Finally, I made a wrist out of a thin foam cylinder. I slid that onto the forearm and then made circular foam shoulders. I cut a hole for the shoulder joint and then one for the arm itself. I reinforced the shoulder hole with scrap foam circles left over from some long forgotten project. I did, however, have to cut a notch in them after the glue had dried, just to further secure the arm once it's in there. I glued those in, and now it's time to make the spine. For H.E.L.P.e.R's spine, I'm going to use these connective PVC joints to link together scrap PVC pipe, because none of the pipes that I have are quite tall enough. I'm not actually going to glue these together because they'll be vertical, so gravity will hold them in place, and I know that I'm going to have to take them apart for transport. Not to mention he breaks a lot in the show. This cross section is important because it's going to hold the shoulder pivoting piece. In fact, why don't I just show you? This is going to go through here, and it's going to allow the arms to pivot. Now, this next step irritates me so much that I got to do it, but I built a swivel chair base. Basically because I was searching pretty much every Goodwill and Savers in the area for a swivel chair with only 4 wheels, which are apparently extremely difficult to come by because, as it turns out, they're wildly unstable. And I realized that in the time that I spent searching, I could have totally built one. I have the lumber. So here's me building an incredibly quick and dirty swivel chair base. It ain't pretty, but it gets the job done. I made some basic details out of foam, then I painted it black. Just want to point this out. I'm using gloss black here, and I could get away with saying, oh, because I want the top coat of silver to be really shiny, but no, it's because I couldn't find my flat black. Until I got the first layer on, and here it is. And that's why you have to clean your shop. Then I put in the casters. For the neck and middle spine, I'm going to use this conduit. And finally, I assembled all the pieces. Helpful electronic lab partner e-robot. Now you can defeat the mighty monarch, but only with the help of Patrick Warburton. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this build, then you can subscribe and hit the bell icon to see future prop builds. Once again, I'd like to thank my patrons. If you're interested in supporting the channel, you can check out the links in the description down below. Anything pledged goes towards improving the video quality, prop functionality, and shop equipment, and allowing me to put together bigger and more exciting projects for you to enjoy on the channel. Happy crafting! See you later!